Pastor Andy, thank you so much for being here. We are so thrilled to have you. Yes, thank you. Here you are.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I just want to give you guys so much credit for taking time out of your summer to join in AME and all that you guys are doing. And it just shows how God works. You know, how um, my friend from growing up and just my whole childhood, he was the son of my pastor. He married a girl named Julie, who's Julie Lawrence, who works with you guys, that connected with me. And so just God is just so cool of how he kind of intersects. And I was in student ministry for a long time. Any of you guys in a youth group or anything like that, and your home church, and you have a youth pastor who attempts to be kind of cool and hip. So that's kind of me. I'm that guy who tries to attempt to be cool and hip. So be kind if I try to use words that are just outdated and things like that. But I just want to thank you guys for all your support for our family and our daughter. And I just wanted, and I love this theme of compassion, a compassionate heart. And as we look at the word compassion and what that means, I think that hopefully things can surface that we can look at things a little bit differently. And my goal is to inform you and to help you guys grow in understanding compassionate, but not to bore you. So I'm going to try not to bore you. And I know you guys are all in your home and you guys are in the comforts of you, some of you in your PJs and stuff. And so it's easily to fall asleep. And I remember when Paul was preaching in Acts, there's a kid, he falls out of the window because he's so bored, and so hopefully that doesn't happen today. And so I'm just so excited. And you guys are all musicians. I play the guitar, and then all of a sudden I see people who are real musicians, and I'm quickly humbled. And so I am an attempted musician on my guitar. I can lead some worship, but I cannot sing that well. So I just want to say, I just applaud you guys for your musical talents, because I'm sure that they are just way better than mine. And that's not saying much, but I think that is awesome. But I just want to let you know who Ellie is and give you a little bit of a background to where we got to where we are now and what God has been teaching me, because I believe that, God is still active. I don't believe that this book is something that has a conclusion to it, but it's to be continued. And I don't know if you guys read novel books or anything like that. And at the end of the book, you're thinking, what's next? And we are in that what's next phase of God's story of redeeming this world. And so I have 4 kids. I have a 9-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and I have a 7-month-year-old. So right now, Ellie is with her mom and my wife. They are getting radiation, and we're getting radiation for the next 5 weeks. And I'll kind of tell you what's going on there in a little bit. But just to let you know that my other 3 kids are roaming the house free. And so my 7-year-old is watching my 7-month-year-old. Have you ever guys watched a baby? It's not the easiest thing. So if you see our little boy Drew creep in, I want to apologize for that. And so they're doing that thing, and Ellie and my wife should be home in a little bit. But back in 2017, in April, my 5-year-old then, Ellie Bauer, Elizabeth is her real name, she was getting some stomach pain, and we didn't know what it was. And any of you guys had like tummy issues, and you're kind of like, you probably think it's probably the stomach bug, but this persisted for quite a while. And we were just trying to figure, this is not, normal. And so we felt a mass in her abdomen, just like this hard spot in her belly. And so after numerous visits to the doctors, one of our friends works at Boston Children's Hospital, and he said, hey, I can get you an appointment here. And so off we went. And that night we were in the ICU because what they found was a tumor the size of a cantaloupe that engulfed her whole entire left side of her body. It engulfed her kidney and engulfed all these other organs. And it was pressing on some very sensitive areas that was causing her blood pressure to rise. And just like that, we were in the cancer world. And no one chooses this. You've probably seen commercials, right? St. Jude's commercials of kids who have no hair and kids who are just really sick. And you kind of think, that I feel bad for them, and you're thankful that you're not them, of course, but you never think that you would be in that world. And we never thought we would be in this world. And all of a sudden, just like that, we are thrown into this world. And as for the next 3 days, we're just getting all this information of what type of cancer it is and the treatment plan for it. And someone put it, it's like standing under a waterfall. And if you ever been hiking or under a waterfall, you just get drenched for a long time. And this news was just drenching us. And to this day, I'll never forget those first 2 days, because what they said was like, it doesn't matter what happens from now. Even if we, do another scan and everything's gone, we are on a course for about a 2-year treatment plan. And it is the harshest treatment plan that medical science can offer anybody. And that is a big pill to swallow. And so for that next, year and a half, it was a final thing. We went through 5 rounds of chemo, losing her hair, um, throwing up, nausea. Then she had these 2 transplants, which they gave her so much chemo that wiped out all of her bone marrow, which produces your blood, your red blood, your white blood, your platelets. And we were in the ICU because she had complications. And I remember when we were in the ICU, because her liver stopped function, grace of God, she pulled through. And we were in the hospital for that first year. I would say half of that year, Ellie slept in a hospital bed and not in her own bed. And we got through it, and we were thanking God for this time. The cancer was gone, and we were on a trial pill, and we were like, this is amazing. God, you heard our prayers. Hallelujah. It is gone. And she lost about 20% of her weight. She lost her hair, but she was alive and she was healthy at that point. And we were just so thankful for that. And she was 7 years old at the time. So all of her whole age being 6, she was in treatment, and half of being 7, she was in treatment. She went back to school, and we think finally we're back to normal, because we're always looking for normal, right? Where that comfort is. You probably in COVID-19, right? Some of you guys probably, I just wish things could go back to how they were, right? And it's kind of the idea that the grass is greener on the other side. When we were in school, when we could see our friends. You guys think like that a lot? I think like that all the time. But I feel like God is calling us to water the ground where we are right now. And so 9 months go by, and then Ellie starts having some hip pain, and her school nurse finds a lump in her left side. And we find out that she has relapsed. And in the neuroblastoma world, when you relapse, that is not a good thing, because that means that the cancer did not respond to the treatment and has actually become resistant to it. So we get to this place where we just feel defeated. And then all of a sudden, we get thrown back into this cancer treatment world. And for the next 9 months, we are in this world. And just to add a little bit to that, we also were expecting our 4th child. And it was not a thing that we had planned for, but God had blessed us within it. So my wife is pregnant. I'm in the hospital every 3 weeks with my daughter. And we are just trying to figure this out. And then at the same time, our other daughter, our 6-year-old at the time, she develops something called diabetes insipidus. And it basically means that something in her brain is telling her kidney not to do something. And we find out that she is probably going to start cancer treatment as well because of a brain tumor. So in that whole last summer, Ellie relapsed. We are pregnant, having a baby due in November, and our other daughter has an oncology team and gets an MRI of her brain for a brain tumor that they are anticipating to see anytime. Now that's a lot, right? And a lot of people will say that is too much for you to handle. And to that, I say, it is. It is way too much for us to handle, but it's never too much for God to handle. And I think that's where we shifted, was that. So off we went. And then this baby was born. And 2 days after the baby was born, I'm in the hospital with Ellie for a week of treatment. Our other daughter had an MRI. That was clear, thankfully. And here we are. She gets cleared. Miraculously, the doctors, the treatment works that they never imagined would work so fast and so effective. And there we are saying, God, here's your miracle. Here's your miracle. And we go to New York, to your neck of the woods. We go to Sloan Kettering for this trial. So we spend a lot of time there. And then about 2 months ago, we have a scan and we find out that her cancer has yet returned, and it has spread, and it has gone all over her abdomen, up her neck, and down to her hips. And we are devastated. So that's kind of where we are now. And so we got some news that we should try this trial drug. And so we tried a drug that didn't work. And for 2 months, we were on this drug. And then we found out that her cancer had spread so much that now we have to go into immediate defense, where we have to push the tumors back in order for her to live. And that's where we are now. So we are blasting it with radiation. We just got chemo, and we'll get scans next week to see if it's working. And so we're in a really interesting place. And so this word compassion comes in. Now, what does compassion mean, and how do we have compassion for each other? Ellie, is a kid just like you. She loves to paint. She loves to sing. She just wants to be a little girl and play with her friends and not be hurt by all these pokes and anything like that. Now, I think there's a difference between compassion and empathy. So when Ellie had her surgery, they cut her open and they took this mass out. I actually had surgery 2 weeks before. And so when I had my surgery, I felt like, oh, I can feel Ellie's pain. Now that's empathy. Empathy is when you feel the other person's pain, because I've gone through it. Maybe some of you guys have had some hurts in your life, and you can say, I can feel what you're feeling because of this situation. Maybe it was death in the family. Maybe it was hard. Maybe you were sick, and you say, that is empathy. But compassion is a little bit different than that. Compassion is not just feeling someone's pain, it's joining in someone's pain. Does that make sense? Now, I think that is, for me, I was looking at this because I love people. You guys love people. And you see people hurting and you say, oh, that is such a shame that, I wish God would do something. I wish people would do something. And that is kind of not what compassion is. So the word is, there's a Latin word, and it's called compatai, and if you take what that word means, it means to suffer with. So compassion actually means that you are suffering with somebody else. It means that you are joining them in the suffering. So how can you have compassion for someone like Ellie? Do you go and say, hey, inject me with cancer so I may have cancer and suffer with you? That's not compassion. That's just unwise. That is not something that we're called to do. But it does mean, how can I suffer with other people? And I believe in order to suffer with, you need to sacrifice for. And sacrificing can be anything. It can be your time. It can be your energy. It can be your finances. And a lot of us, we don't want to suffer with other people. We want to be strong, have them suffer, and support them. But compassion is joining others in their suffering. See, Psalm 103 says this: praise the Lord, O my soul, and my inmost being. Praise his holy name, who satisfies your desires with good things, so that your youth is renewed like eagles. The Lord works righteous and justice for all the oppressed. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in love. How is God compassionate? We think of God, he's just looking down on us saying, oh, poor people who are suffering with all these things. Poor Ellie, who has to go with in the hospital every day, get pokes. I have to give her her shot in the morning and at night. I'm not a doctor, and I have to give her a shot. And that, we say, well, what's compassion? But what God did is he gave us his son. And so Jesus comes down, he suffers with us, he weeps with us, and he died on the cross and he suffered. So therefore he joined us in our suffering. Now, my guess is if I were going to go around and ask you guys, all of you guys are probably dealing with something in your life that's causing you to suffer. Just the fact that we are on Zoom and not in person is a suffering thing. COVID-19 is really hard. And it is something that has altered our life, that has changed how we act and do things. And that's really hard. Our kids, we go to a place called Canopy Lake Park, which is like a big amusement park, and they can't do that. I bet you guys have a summer routine that you probably go camping, you're going vacation, or you do something, and you're probably not able to do that. And that is really hard. And so as we look at suffering in this world that's broken, how did Jesus suffer with us? He did that by coming into the world, experiencing what we experience, and therefore having compassion on us because he knows what it means to suffer. So it's not just to suffer, it's to suffer with, but it's to sacrifice for. And as you guys are doing right now, this is our story. People, you don't know me. I'm some bald guy who's on your computer screen right now. But you guys have chosen to listen and chosen to be included in our story. And one thing that my wife and I always say is that everything is for God's glory. Ellie's story is for God's story. So much that when Ellie was diagnosed, my wife and I were planning to plant a church. Planting a church is hard work. We were just going to start a church from the ground up. And we actually had a meeting with the leaders of our church that we were currently serving at. We were going to roll out this plan. And instead of having that meeting with our leaders, we were in the ICU for that first night. And I called our leaders and I said, hey guys, we can't meet about our church plant because our daughter has cancer and we have a long road ahead of us. And I'm thinking, God, we were doing this for you. Why did you put this church on pause and throw us into this world of cancer? And I believe that God's saying, you know what? You have all your T's crossed, your I's dotted. You have everything on the books you understand, but do you really know me? Do you really know who I am? And for the next couple of years, we had this long date with our Lord. So that's what God does. God's plans are different than our plans. And so I just want to take a minute here and go to Luke chapter 10 and just read the parable of the Good Samaritan. But before that, I may have to grab my little boy. Hey, Emmy, Em. 7-year-olds do not make the best babysitters, if you guys know that. She's doing her best. But I don't know if you guys read about this, but Luke chapter 10, and this is Jesus speaking in parables. And I think this is such a great example of compassion, and it relates to our story and what we've seen as well. And so this is Jesus. He's talking to his disciples. He's talking to his people. And he says this. He gives them a story. And he says, a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead inside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed on the other side. So you have two men who are supposed to do the right thing. If you were be hurting and you said, hey, a pastor's coming, you would say, oh, great, a pastor is going to have a compassionate heart. He's going to help me. He's going to save me. But in this particular instance, he does not. And they walk on the other side. And the reason why they walk on side is not because they were mean. It's because they felt like they were unclean, because they thought that probably this man was dead, and his body, a dead body, is something that you are not supposed to go near. You're not supposed to touch. Just like, by the way, this is my boy Drew. I apologize. Can you say hi? Hi, Drew.
Hi, Drew.
Drew. Look at all those people. We're talking about compassion.
Hi, Drew. You're so cute.
So hopefully he'll be good like this. I'm gonna let you, maybe he could be a good distractant while you guys listen as well. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. And so he doesn't just sit there and says, oh, poor guy lying in a ditch, right? Many of you guys, poor people who are suffering, poor this, poor that. Instead, he goes over to him. The Samaritan soothes his wounds with olive oil, wine, and bandages them. So first thing he does is he helps him. He physically helps him. Then he put the man on his own donkey, took him to the inn where they took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins. So then he gives financial assistance, which is sacrifice, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Now, Jesus says, now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? The man replied, the one who showed mercy. Then Jesus said, now go and do the same. What a beautiful picture of compassion. See, compassion comes with action. I think this is so important to know that. You know, I don't know if, I know most of you guys are probably watching TV online. We, for the first time, Ellie watched a commercial in the hospital. And I remember, because we just have Netflix and Amazon, we don't have TV here. And she's watching her show on Disney Junior or whatever it was, and a commercial comes on, and she's like, Dad, what is happening? What is interrupting my show? And I'm like, Ellie, this is a commercial. She's like, what's a commercial? So maybe you guys don't know what commercials is, but when I was growing up, and maybe you guys have growing up had the same thing, where there were these commercials for, you know, Compassion International, World Relief, Food for the Hungry. And you see these kids that were hungry and starving, and you'd kind of like, your heart would break, and you'd be like, oh, that's so sad that that's going on in the world. But then you would probably change the channel, or as soon as a commercial was done, it's like it never happened. That's not compassion. Compassion comes with action. And I was talking to Sue earlier today. I think if everyone were here, if I said, hey guys, guess what? I have tickets for all of you guys. We're going to Africa, and we're going to feed the hungry, and we're going to dig wells, and we're going to go and serve these people. I've talked with your parents. They're all cool with it. My guess is all of you guys would be like, I'm in, and pack, and you meet us at the airport, and off we go, right? You guys would do that. But it's so hard to know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And so compassion is sacrifice. What's the little you can do? See, I believe this. I believe you can't do everything for everyone, but you can do something for someone. I want to say that again, because I think this is so important. You can't do everything for everyone, but you can do something for someone. I believe God has purposely placed you in the position that you are now for a reason. Only you are in the position that you are in. I'm not in your position. I'm not where you are at. God has placed you with the people around you. And the question is, why? I'll give you guys a story. I was on my way to New York. Are you guys all from New York, New Jersey area, that area? Yeah. So we're going to Manhattan, and I had just gotten my wheels changed on my car. And I don't think any of you guys can drive yet, but it's always good to rotate your wheels. But they forgot to tighten the nuts on my tires. So they just did it with their hands. And so I'm in Connecticut and my wheels start to wobble. And my car is about to like explode. And I'm like, what is going on here? Why is my car, like making these sounds? It's just me and Ellie. We're going to get this injection, this treatment in Manhattan. And so I pull over the side of the road and I call the closest Honda dealership to get my car fixed so we could get to New York. We get to this Honda dealership and they look at my wheels and say, I can't believe you guys made it here. You guys were like, 1 mile from your wheels from falling off. There's 5 nuts on each tire, and each tire only had 2 nuts left with about a 2-inch wiggle room of the tires. I don't know if that makes sense. Basically, it was really bad. We almost died. It was like crazy stuff. So while we're in Connecticut, I'm asking God this. God, why in the world do you have us in this little town of Connecticut? Why? The first thing is next to the Honda dealership was a Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A. You guys like Chick-fil-A? It's like the best. So we don't have a lot of Chick-fil-A's near where we are. I'm right outside of the Boston area. So I'm stoked. Like, maybe God wanted us for Chick-fil-A. I don't know. But why does God place us? So we were talking with these technicians at the Honda dealership. They got to know Ellie, and they fell in love with Ellie. Then pretty soon, they started communicating. They started, once we left the Honda dealership, they sent us a presents for Ellie. They started following us on social media. They started texting us. And some of the texts were, I've never prayed before, but now I'm starting to pray. One said, hey, I've been having a hard time, so I've been going to the Bible to look for answers, and I've never done this before. And pretty soon, God placed us, Ellie's story in their life for them to point them to Jesus. Now, isn't that crazy? God used a mistake that a mechanic made to bring us to Connecticut in order to meet these 2 assistants who didn't know Jesus, who are now getting to know and love Jesus as their Lord and Savior. You don't plan that. I think something that we try to predict our plans, right? Like no one planned COVID-19. We write our plans down and say, hey, God, this is what I think you should do. God, for me, it's like, if you heal Ellie now with a miracle, then we're going to give you glory. We're happy. You're happy. All is well. And God's like, see, that's your plan, but my plan's a little bit differently. I actually want to send you to Connecticut, and I want you to reach these 2 people that you've never met before because I want them to know who I am. And it was like, would you write that down? Would you say, hey, I'm going to go on a Zoom call and talk to this guy who's bald, who has a daughter, who's in the hospital fighting cancer? You wouldn't plan that, but here we are. And so we have to say, God, why? What do you want us to do? What is the purpose that God has placed for me? Paul says this in Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's handiwork created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God had prepared in advance for us to do. I think as 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, God has a plan for you, that he planned things for you to do, the good works that he has said, hey, I have things planned. I want you to have compassion, enjoying in the suffering of these people, these causes, these things that you don't have to work for them. They're already planned for you if you would just say yes. I was speaking a couple of years ago to a bunch of students, and I put together, I kind of use this analogy. Let's say any of you guys cook. If you are a cook, you will know this. Ellie right now is obsessed with Pioneer Woman on Food Network and cooking. She just loves to cook. And so she slaves over the kitchen, and she's making things like Coolio. I don't even know what Coolio is. I guess it's like something with fruit or whatnot. So she's making all this stuff. But let's say you decided to cook for one of your friends or your parents or someone in your life. You say, I want to make an awesome meal for them. And you go to the kitchen and you make this, whatever your dish is, you make it and you're sweating and it's awesome. And you prepared this amazing dish for your family, your friends, whoever it may be. And you say, hey, Bobby, Sally, come on over. It's ready for you. And they come over with a McDonald's bag and they look at the meal that you have prepared for them, and they pick up the McDonald's bag and say, I'm good, I got a Big Mac. How would you feel? Say, well, what is this? See, I think that's the same thing that God does, is that he prepares these things for us to do, these good works. And he's like, I want you to do this. I've created you. I've given you these gifts. I've given you talents to make music. I've given you a heart to want to help and to serve. I've placed you in so-and-so's life and so-and-so's life. I've prepared. And if we were to look at what God prepared for us and say, hey, I'm good, I got a Big Mac, how do you think that makes God feel? So just know that God has prepared good works for you to do big things. And only you can do the certain things that God has placed on your heart. I heard a story, and I don't think it's a true story, but it's a good analogy of this girl who lived in New York City, and she's on her way home from a long day at work, and she sees a man who's a homeless man that's just begging, that's not doing well, that's sick, kind of like the Good Samaritan story that we just read. And she goes home and she gets on her knees and she starts praying, God, would you do something to help this man? God, would you do something? And that's a valid prayer, right? That's a valid prayer, to pray for those who are in need. God, would you do something to help Ellie? We accept, we want, and we need your prayers. God, would you do something to help this man? And the story goes that she heard a voice, and God responded, I did do something. I created you. Maybe the thing that God wants to use to fix or to help or to serve is you. And you think, well, I'm only 10 years old. I'm only 11 years old. I'm only 12, 13, 14. Age is not a thing for what God can do. And you may not be able to do what an adult do in the same way, but you actually may be able to do something bigger and better. So ask God, what have you prepared for me to do? What is it, Lord, that you have placed only me? What person do you want me to speak to? Kind of like the question of, why did you send me to Connecticut with a broken car? And when we start living like that, we can truly have a compassionate heart. We can truly see the sacrifice. That every situation that we have in our life is an opportunity for God to use us. That every situation in our life is something that God may have planned for us to do big things. My sister works in Kenya and works with kids with disabilities. Actually, that's how I met my wife. We were in Kenya working with kids with disabilities, and I was very involved. And I would see these kids that were just couldn't walk, couldn't talk, all the above, and your heart just breaks. And I remember this one time we were walking in a village, we're in the bush. It's me and my sister, and we see the little girl that we're coming to see. Her name was Hadija. And she had spina bifida, so she couldn't walk, and she was 4 years old at the time. And her mom, when she was born, left her because her mom thought that her daughter was cursed because she was disabled. So her mom left her, and her dad, who needed to work, would leave this 4-year-old at the house every day while he would go to work. So we go and visit, and we see her on this trail, and we see the drag marks from where she had crawled because she couldn't walk for about 50 yards. And we get to her hut, which was 4 sticks and a thatched roof. This is where she slept with her dad. And then we see a snake, a green mamba, the second most deadliest snake in Africa. And all these Kenyans, they start throwing rocks at the snake that lived in the hut that they lived in. So what do? So at that point, we said, we're going to drop everything and do everything we can to help this little girl. We ended up getting enough funds to get her into a school, getting her to a boarding school. And now Hadija is thriving now. And it came with a lot of sacrifice, came with a lot of money, a lot of effort. We had a woman who would be her mom to take care of her while she was at school. See, that's a little bit different to say, oh, poor child, and then just kind of move on. And I think the same is for you guys. As you hear our story, and I'm not asking for you guys to sacrifice for us, but just by being here and listening is a sacrifice enough. Because Ellie is no different than you guys. Ellie loves, the same things that you do. And just, I think the first thing is to see people for being people. Not as someone who has cancer, not as someone who is, hurting or from a different ethnic background, but people who are people, who are children of God. And think, how can I join them in their suffering? How can I have a compassionate heart for them? So that's where we are now. Ellie now is goes to the hospital every day. And I think she's feeling very defeated, to be honest with you. 3 years is a long time to have to live with not feeling well, tummy aches, a lot of pokes. Any of you guys like getting shots? Probably not. She gets shots twice a day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, depending on the day. And we're just trusting, God, what do you have us? So when we go in the hospital, we believe God has placed us there. We believe that God has given us a purpose there. When we encounter people who want to be a part of Ellie's story, we think that anyone who wants to include us, they get a front row seat to what God is doing in Ellie's life. And we're seeing people that have been so compassionate on us. Our other car broke down and we needed a car. Well, the next day I look at my driveway and I see a Honda Pilot and this family running away. And I go to the family, what are you guys doing? The keys and the title are in the car. The car is yours. They gave us their car. Now that's sacrifice. That's compassion. Ellie needed her own bathroom. We only had one bathroom in our house. We only had 2 bedrooms. So we needed another bedroom. And we had about 30 people come over the 2 months, build a bathroom and a room for her. Now that is sacrifice, and that's compassion. We had someone sell these pink wristbands, and what was meant to be a couple $100 turned to fund all of those projects. And that was sacrifice, and that was compassion. So compassion is to suffer with and to sacrifice for. And who is God calling you to do those things? Because God has a plan for you and has placed you purposely for that. So I don't know if there are...
So I believe Ian and Ellie, did you guys have a question? You're raising your hand.
Well, it was my brother who had a question.
So
Yeah.
Ian and Ellie were both raising their hand digitally. So
No, it was my brother.
Yeah, it was just me who raised the hand.
okay,
I have
great.
a question for Pastor Andy though. Does she still go to the hospital even during quarantine? Because that seems dangerous.
It's a great question. So she goes every day during quarantine, and before she's admitted, we go to park the car, and we have a special parking place where a nurse comes, we roll down the window, and they actually give her a COVID test in the parking lot. And they will not give her a bed until she tests negative. And so we are allowed to have any visitors. There's only one person that can be in the room with her, as well as a medical nurse or doctor. So in the past, her friends would come visit. There'd be clowns. They're so funny. These clowns would come in. People would come in and play music. We can't do any of that. So it's really kind of hard this go around because everything's shut down. And when people do come in, they're all gowned up and they got the shield on and all that stuff. So it definitely has changed things, but she needs the medicine. So COVID-19, here or not, it doesn't really matter.
One more question, or well, not. It's not really a question, but did you know my sister's name is also Ellie?
I saw that. Now, Ellie, is that short for anything? Because our Ellie
No,
is
it's her actual English name.
I love it.
Yeah. How convenient.
Yeah.
Pastor Andy, is your Ellie short for anything, or is it just
Short
Ellie?
for Elizabeth.
Nice.
Wow, thank you so much. That was just, wow. I mean, that was just incredible stories and incredible message that we really needed to hear. Thank you so much. We're gonna talk about this. Let's open up the table for all of the students. Any more questions you guys have?
Can I ask a question? So,
Yeah.
Do you guys feel, and working with students, do you guys feel like you don't know what to do to help when you look at the world because maybe you're young? Does that ever get frustrating for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And does anybody have anything that they have actually done, and despite all of this, that they have? Does that make sense? Because I think that, I know for myself, we see suffering in other people. And who am I? What can I do? But I just want to let you know that God does have a plan for you, and it may not be to solve world hunger or cancer, but it may be your friend who's hurting, that you would just listen to them, talk to them, maybe send them a message, and maybe something as small as that, maybe bigger than that. And so I just want to encourage you guys that there's nothing too small or too big to have compassion for somebody, and to avoid walking on the other side of the street. I think we do that so many times. Oh, that's sad, but I'm just going to walk around it. So don't, Paul says in 1 Timothy, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. And
That is our theme verse, Pastor Andy.
Yeah, 4:12. Nice.
Yeah, 4:12. That's AMU's theme verse that we recite every year, and we did that actually yesterday too. Absolutely.
Wait, is it? Hold on.
Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech and conduct and love and purity. Yes. I know that it is 10:50 now, and we really should release you because you are so busy. And we are so grateful for your message, and we are going to keep in touch because we just learned so much, and we don't even know I don't even know how to express the gratefulness that I have for all the things that you just shared, the difficulties and the sufferings that you're going through right now. So suffering, we are learning and gaining so much. And so really, thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Anybody else want to express thank you before Pastor Andy leaves? Please go ahead now. This is a time. I think they're all absorbing.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna turn on my video. Thank you so much.
Actually, can we all turn on our video, you guys? Everybody, please.
I just wanted to know how we can pray for you on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think right now to pray for strength and protection for Ellie. I think there's always the healing. And I think that what we're learning is that miracles are not always a moment, but a process. And so we have a long process for her. And there's a lot of what ifs in this treatment that could go wrong. And right now, for the next week, her tumor, as I said, is around her vena cava. And if this tumor keeps growing, it will stop the flow of blood into her heart. And so we're highly being monitored. And so we're just praying for the day for her to not have that happen, and for this radiation and the chemo just to shrink it initially to give us some breathing room. The radiation also has a lot of effects on her blood counts, that she may need transfusions. And then there's some severe complications that could happen. So the biggest prayer right now is strength and protection over her body. Ellie lost 90% of her hearing because of this treatment. So has hearing aids and everything. So there's a lot of battle wounds in her body, but she's still just an amazing little girl that is just like you guys. And so she also lost 25% of her weight in the last 2 weeks. And we're praying that her appetite increases. And this is what God does, which is cool. When her appetite increases, her Food Network increases. So she starts watching more and more Food Network, which is great. We have an app, and it just gets her in the mood to cook. And it's just only happens when she has no appetite, and that gets her to cook. So to pray for her body to be protected. And then the last thing is her psyche. This round, I can definitely see a mental exhaustion in her. She just seems a lot more down, more tired of all of this. I think she's getting older as well. So some of the things like, hey, giving her a toy, giving her that is not cutting it anymore. And she's just really sad. She's sad that she has to do that. But we believe God's doing a big work in her. And we are very expecting big miracles to happen. We just don't know when. So does that make sense? So there's a lot, but those are, I know that's a lot, but those are the big things to be praying for.
Thank you. You will definitely put that in our board, and we will be praying diligently.
Yeah.
Thank you.